What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Happy Monday, the second Monday in this new year. I am Lawrence Henderson of Business Operational Support Services, LLC, aka Boss. It's great to be here with you all as I change my name from co host to the boss. But I wanted to start off this new year. And again, there have been a lot of topics out there in the world, and particularly those around, what does it look like to lead in this new age of leadership and development and coaching and all these other things. But I want you all, as you engage with me on this topic today, of what in the world does it mean to lead in these areas of unprecedented times, right? We've heard it, all these cliches and all these other things, the Great Resignation, other things like leading with intentionality and coaching with intentionality, and all these other things that are out there in the world today. But I want you to engage in really what does it actually all mean to lead in unprecedented times. So I'm be checking your comments and all these other good things because the biggest part of it for me, and it all starts as coach and as a trainer, starting with leading yourself. How are you engaging with what's happening in the world, whether it's a pandemic or the things that are coming up as important for you in your life, in your community, in your family, and all these other things, and the things that you're doing to be well in these times. And one of the biggest things that I know that I'm doing is practicing the art of doing less with more of what I want to be doing. And you're like, Lawrence, what in the world does that mean? It actually means just making sure that I'm taking care of the work that I've been called to and that I'm assigned to, as it pertains to what it all means in the world that we find ourselves living in. So I want you all to start commenting, leaving some things in there. What are you all doing to lead with intentionality and lead in these unprecedented times? And one of the biggest things, and kind of topic number one for me, is really leading through some truths. And I heard it yesterday as I was listening to a message about, and you always hear this comment from a lot of people, I'm living in my truth. Well, what does that actually even mean? And the way it was described is, for a lot of us, living in our truth means we're living through the lens of the truth that I'm willing to tell you. And that's the truth we're actually living out. But really, to live through your truth is really you accepting the things that have happened, but then you making sense of what that means for you moving forward. And there's holding on to what actually is true and what's actually true versus what we're making true. And so for a lot of us, we've been living through these made up realities, if you will, and we've pulled those things forward. We've made those things true in our lives, and we haven't really been intentionally engaging from a place of, is it helpful, is it useful, and all these other things. And so I would say the first thing is understanding what your truth is and how to lead and how to grow and how to live in unprecedented times. Is find out what truth you've been living, and then is it serving you? And so what that leads me to is the next part of this is, okay, have you in this year, we've all done the goal setting. You heard Karen, as we were live last week, talk about changing and reframing goals to possibilities. But really, have you sat long enough to set an intention of moving past this performative or reactive state of being? I know for me, last year, 2021 was huge for me, seeing what my next first steps looked like as it pertains to growing out what boss is supposed to be doing in the world. And one of the biggest things that came from that, from it being performative for me, was, yeah, I had long-term goals, but really I started beginning to chunk things into seasons of life. Yeah, the seasons of life. And when I chunked it down and I really sat with myself and said, Lawrence, what do you want to be experiencing more often than not in these seasons? I had to answer this one question of, what do I want? What do I want out of life? What do I want to bring to the world? And then when I sat and began to reflect with what I want, what I desire to be seeing in the world, I hadn't even sat long enough to say it's changed. Right when I transitioned out of the army back in 2015, man, I was about to say 17, but it's been 7 years at the end of this month since I transitioned out. Stuff looks different. I have more gray in my beard than I did those 7 years ago. But now, when I transitioned out, I said I wanted to be the government contractor and I wanted to sell, commodities back to the military across organizations. And, I was going to be the TP guy, toilet paper, for those of you out there. I was going to be that guy, copy paper, all the rest of that. But I was just going to be doing stuff to where today, the work I desire to be doing is really, really, really foundational in just being founded in meaningful work, meaningful to me, meaningful to clients that I engage, and making sure that as I assess where we're at in the ebbs and flows of any engagement, making sure that we are always pulling forward and putting into practice Stephen Covey's third habit of putting first things first, right? And so creating that meaning, creating that value, and moving away from it just being a performance, but it being a way of life. And so that was something that in 2021, I began that work. Didn't arrive by any stretch of the imagination, didn't arrive at any good place of, arrival. It's just a maturation. And some things that I really matured in were me extending myself to partnerships, if you will. And when I say partnerships, I'm talking about partnerships in a sense of making myself available for the mission and vision of others that I know are doing great work in the world. And so have some amazing partnerships and some other amazing development professional organizations that are out there that have allowed me the opportunity to partner with them on their journey of impacting and inspiring lives and doing leadership development well, doing coaching and professional development well. And so began to do, right? It was my whole TED Talk thing, actions over ideas always win. It was me putting that stuff into practice every time I engaged. It was pulling forward those stories of what do I do to help an organization connect the dots, right? It was putting my t-shirts and my posters into practice, if you will. So it moved away from performative things and theatrics as it pertains to the work that I do. And another big thing that I was gifted the opportunity to do and really go deep with a client was really digging into this thing around psychological safety. All right. When we think about leading in unprecedented times, nobody has lived this series of years before. And every organization has been trying to wrap their mind around what does it look like to do this and lead well in this stuff, right? There's no labels for us as much as we love labels. We love to label stuff. There's no labels for it. The definitions of what we believe or what it looks like, they're changing. It's nuanced. And so the biggest thing here is helping everybody feel like we're connecting in a meaningful way, but we're also safe to do it and be safe in that lack of understanding. So I'm going to ask a question. When was the last time anybody's felt okay with saying this? I don't know. I know, right? It felt kind of crazy me saying it out loud. But when was the last time you sat with, I don't know, and you actually were okay with it? You actually didn't start beating yourself up about it or started saying something like, well, I should know. Somebody, I should know. Well, how could you? How could you? Did you predict somehow in 2020 that we would literally be in a pandemic? Did you know? Did you hear it? Did you get a memo about it? No. And so for a lot of us, it's becoming comfortable with saying, I don't know. And we start thinking about the topic of psychological safety, which Amy Edmondson, I love her work, but also Dr. Timothy Clark and so many others now, there are thousands of articles written on it now. And we think about leadership and pulling things forward is psychological safety isn't the absence of conflict. And a part of internal conflict is us getting to that place saying, I don't know. For a lot of us in our roles or professional roles as individual contributors, we've been paid to know. Well, again, the game has changed. And so to lead and engage well in unprecedented times is to say, you know what? Got to do something differently. And what does that look like to put in practice? That means you actually need to posture and position yourself that allows others to come along with you. Yeah. Posturing and positioning ourselves, allowing spaces and creating spaces so that others can come into those spaces and we begin to co-create as an operational practice. Man, it's changing the game. That's changing the game. That is psychological safety in practice. Saying it's safe not to know, but it's also safe to be in the presence of it. And we all just begin to lay things out there. But here's the crazy part. As leaders, leading them through this amazingly large scale pilot program that we call life today. That's what you get the gift to do, is to say, you know what? we're going to put some things into practice. Great ideas, hopefully based on the data that your organization has collected up to that point of what success measures were, but what are they today? And the only way you could begin to evolve what all that looks like is you got to be able to do things differently based on the data points and how life is supposed to be lived today, right? There are no metrics from 20 years ago that will support what the world looks like today. There just aren't. From a industry standpoint and all the rest of that, product engagement, service engagement, all the rest of that, yeah, you got that. But based on the realities of today, we need to be able to create these foundationally safe spaces and stop trying to pontificate and act like we got it all together. We don't, y'all. So again, when you hear somebody say, what does it mean to lead in unprecedented times? It's a collection of things. It's a collection of things that says, hey, we got to move past the performance. Let's create a place of community. And here's one foundational thing for me in the PhD work that I'm doing. Y'all, going into this second year of studying and writing papers around organizational leadership, one of the biggest things that has come up a lot over these last several semesters has been this identification of the truth about who we are as an organization. It's the culture. The cultures that we are allowing to be the foundations and cornerstones of the way that we do things and the way that we engage. And culture operationally and what it looks like for each individual to take ownership of that, it looks different for everybody. But one thing that needs to happen within every single organization is there needs to be a check-in. There needs to be a cultural check-in, because your active culture are going to be the things that support your retention, your engagement, how people treat each other on a daily basis. And so as we navigate all of these things, what you actually stand for and what's being put into practice are going to be the things that actually begin to shift and sift the things that are floating to the top for your organization. And so again, if you're out there just having a conversation about leading in unprecedented times and what all that means, so throw your comments out there. This year, again, with hot takes and boss, I want to be super intentional. If you're a coach out there, if you're a organizational leadership um, practitioner, I want to have conversations with you about the topics that are coming up for you, the topics that you're researching, the topics that you're supporting your clients with, and how we're beginning to put things into practice. And one of the biggest things now is the implementation of coaching as a leader characteristic. Coaching as a leader characteristic. Yeah. And it's putting in place leaders that become better askers and not tellers. Again, I just said, we've never lived this season of life that COVID has presented to us all. The dynamics of the way and the politics and all these other things that are happening in the world, the things that never used to be allowed to be discussed and talked about in the workplace, these things are now folding into how we do and live our daily lives. And so now it becomes, these are the things that we need to be able to do. These are the things we need to be able to practice. And it's not just about the practical knowledge and experience that we pulled forward from being a tenured employee. Those all have a role and they all have a place. But now it's, how do we live? How do we grow? How do we engage? How do we connect in these unprecedented times? And so if you're a coach, a professional development coach, leadership coach, and you're out there practicing, engaging with leaders and individuals, I would love to have you on Hot Takes. Also, organizational leadership practitioners, whether that's in large scale, small scale, assessments, all the rest of those things. I would love to have conversations with you all. But I appreciate you all who are watching, who all are engaging and will engage after this. So no, like, share. I will pop up my calendar when I will begin doing these lives about these leader topics and what's happening and what are the practitioners doing in the world. So until then, continue to be well, engage well, connect well, and happy 2022 to everybody. See you all soon.